Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to talk a little bit about something that affected me personally, and I think majority of you go through the same thing, and that is how do you find a provider? How do you find a hospital or a nursing home for your loved ones when they need one? So I'm going to give you my experience, and I'll give it to you straight. So let's talk about probably the most common thing, which is finding a doctor or a provider in a particular specialty. Now, that could be a primary care doctor or provider, or it could be somebody that specializes in lung disease or heart disease. I want to break down what provider means because I don't think a lot of people realize that there's differences with the type of care that you can get and the type of professionals that which are out there that can give that care. So when we say provider, we are actually being pretty politically correct in making sure that we are grouping all of the professionals into one group which provides care. And those are called providers. Now, providers can be physicians, which are medical doctors, or doctors of osteopathic medicine, also known as DOs. They can be nurse practitioners, and they can also be physician assistants. Now, the nurse practitioner and physician assistants are what we call advanced practitioners. So these advanced practitioners have gone through additional schooling in order to help physicians carry on their daily work, see patients, and do things for them, delegated tasks such as prescribing. So now there are different rules and regulations based on the state that they practice. I'm going to talk about Texas since that's where I'm located. And here in Texas, a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant cannot practice on their own and they have to be tied to a physician. Now, the physician delegates his prescriptive authorities so that they can prescribe medications and treat patients. In Texas, we are bound to having only 7 of these type of providers underneath us. And it does come with some regulations, such as making sure that we monitor their work that they do. So that's the provider. So if you are seeing a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant, at least in the state of Texas, know that there is a physician that is overseeing the care and has delegated the tasks to that provider. So back to how do you find one? How do you go about looking up a physician or a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant that can help you with what you need? So there's a lot of stigma around who I want to see. And some people don't like seeing nurse practitioners. Some think that the MD is better. Some fall in love with the physician assistant and only wants to see them. In the end, at least depending on where your state is and what the regulations are, everybody has the same goal in mind, which is providing you with the best care. There's also the misconception because somebody walks into a room in the clinic and they automatically think it's a doctor. So there's been multiple times that my nurse practitioner has gone into a room and they've been called doctor. And on the opposite, when I do house calls, when I go into a house, people call me a nurse because that's usually what's common. So there's a lot of misinformation with the nomenclature as well, and people get that mixed up. So it's pretty clear that we need to make sure that we announce ourselves as I am the doctor, I am the nurse practitioner, I am the physician assistant. So you, as a consumer and who are getting care, understand the limits and what we can and cannot offer. Now, how do you go about finding a provider and what do you look for in a provider? Where do you do your research? Or do you just kind of pick whomever your friends and family suggest? Or do you try to do some homework? Well, if you're anything like me and my family, we go to the internet. And we're living in this Amazon era where before you buy something, you look at the reviews. And you can't help but to review the positive reviews and the negative reviews to see that you're not going to be upset when you buy this, or that it's going to do what it says it's going to do, right? So shouldn't it be the same for providers, that I am picking out a doctor or an advanced practitioner that's going to give me the care that I want, that's going to listen to me, that's going to be somebody that I can confide in and trust, that they have my best interests. So it kind of extends even further than that, because it's not just a product or a possession. We do the same thing with people who help us with tasks around the house. So whether it's Uber or Angie's List or Care.com, we're always looking at reviews to see, is this person that I'm hiring going to do what I want them to do? So this is basically the equivalent of friends and family now. We've basically made the global internet community our friends and family, because we are expecting them to give us their honest opinion on what is going on. Now, you may be thinking that you can't believe everything that you read on the internet. And even though it's sad, it's true. And we can get into that a little bit later. So where do you go about looking up reviews on this potential doctor? How would you go about doing it? Well, the first thing that you need to do is you need to look up your insurance, and you need to see which providers are covered under your insurance, okay? And if you're somebody who does not have insurance or doesn't care about if they're covered under your insurance or not, and you just want the best care, or you want somebody who's the closest to your work or to your residence, go for it and search under Google, or there's some other ones that I'm going to tell you about, and try to see what you can find out. And I'm going to break down each of these review sites a little bit more, and I'm going to give it to you straight about what my opinion is. And it's not biased at all. I've done the homework and read the white papers on how these reviews have been captured. So let's start off with Healthgrades. Now, Healthgrades is probably one of the more common, easy to navigate sites that you can go to, and it's pretty easy to remember. Healthgrades. It's basically like Amazon or Google. It's a voluntary survey. You can go on there, search for your doctor, and place a review. It is not targeted, so it's not like, oh, you've had this procedure or you had this outcome and you must fill out a survey. It is actually based on your own voluntary survey of the care that you received. There is no verification process either, so anybody can place a review. Does that mean that doctors can pay for reviews? Well, the site says no, but that doesn't mean that anybody else cannot go onto the site and place a review for that doctor acting as a patient. Your profile as a doctor on that website can be managed not only by you, but it can be managed, or your company can set up a profile for you. So it's not like you are exactly in control as a physician or a provider of what is going on with your profile. Anybody can set up a profile for you. Now, I went ahead and set up my profile, and it just basically asks you that, are you the company or are you this person that is affiliated with Dr. Mehta, and you can go ahead and set up a profile. There is no real verification other than you need a license number, and you can look up your license number. So let me tell you about my experience with Healthgrades, and what I did as a test was look up a physician or a provider within my territory and look at the reviews of that person. So I found a really good physician assistant that works in a medical clinic, and she's got stellar review, 5 stars all around, 100 plus reviews. So I wanted to do more research and figure out, where is this provider working at? So I looked up the provider, and she's working out of a clinic close to me. And I go to the clinic website, and she's not even listed as one of the providers there. So that kind of tells you that you have to take the information that you're seeing on Healthgrades with a grain of salt. Now, I can't say that that is the truth about every provider that's on there. I found another provider, family practice provider, which works with a very large group, and the information on there is true. So it's only as good as whoever is keeping up with your profile or doing it for you. Physicians and their company or their partners can go about advertising via Healthgrades. So if you have a good Healthgrade rating, you can actually use that on your website or market it. So it is a little bit of a marketing tool as well. Next, I'm going to talk mainly about the reviews that you see on Google, because you can look up your provider or you're on the insurance site and it tells you look up this provider, and it takes you to the Google Maps page where it tells you the address, and there you go. You have a rating right there. Well, same thing with Google and Healthgrades is that anybody can leave you a response or a review. So this allows the ability for random people to leave positive or negative reviews. I'm not even going to go into how people are paying other people in countries to leave positive reviews for them, or vice versa, leaving negative reviews for the competition. So I'm not even going to go there, but it has been known to happen. Next, I want to talk about US News and World Report. They're pretty famous in ranking things anywhere from education colleges, high schools, schools, to doctors, nursing homes, and even hospitals. So we're going to talk about the provider aspect first, and then we'll go into talking about hospital rankings later. So let's talk about providers. It seems that the information that I found in the US News and World Report is that the data tied to a physician or provider comes from another source, which means that it's not like a random person can go on there and influence either positive or negatively the reviews that you're getting. So no one can just leave a review for you, but it is actually based out of some data, which it doesn't state, but I am assuming that it is Center for Medicare and Medicaid data based on the criteria that is present. So it actually goes over certain questions that would be normally asked via a survey. So things like the thoroughness of an examination, the ability of the provider to answer questions so you can understand, and how did the provider actually follow up with you. So interesting enough, I compared the results from US News to those of Healthgrades. There were some discrepancies between the reviews, and sometimes I would find a physician that had positive or negative reviews on Healthgrades, but then had no reviews on US News. Another common tool that physicians will use in order to make sure that they're providing good care, or for companies to measure how their providers are doing with patients, is Press Ganey surveys. Now, these Press Ganey surveys are basically targeted surveys to the patients that have been seen, and we have noticed that it is purely based on consumer experience. The providers or the companies that hire these providers have to buy into the Press Ganey process. So it is not a free service, it is not a government or regulated service. It is basically a company or you and your practice buy into the Press Ganey surveys. They send out the surveys and they allocate the data and show you what your patients are saying about you. And this can be used as a marketing tool as well, as you can actually say, hey, look, we've had the best reviews based on our patient surveys. There was a publication in 2019 talking about Press Ganey surveys and how physician demographics actually influenced survey results. it was interesting to see that females had less number of negative reviews than males did. And no surprise that white providers actually got higher rankings than non-white providers. So this does state that there are some biases which occur when patients read and complete these surveys which are sent out to them. So as a consumer of healthcare in America, this can be quite confusing and a little frustrating as well. Who do I believe? How do I pick a doctor now? How do I know that the reviews that I'm reading are actually by patients and not by somebody else? I don't really have a clear answer for you. I really wish that there was an appropriate rating system based on the outcomes of the patients treated by that doctor, right? So I would like to know that my doctor does really well with diabetes and his patients with diabetes do better. So there's something about that doctor that treats diabetes really well. Or that this doctor is very friendly, spends the time with you, makes sure you understand and educates you so that way you can live a better life. So unfortunately, a comprehensive review site like that does not exist. And that kind of data does not exist as well because all of the physicians using different types of software, there's no way to aggregate all that data to find out who's doing well. Now, there are initiatives that primary care physicians have to do in order to making sure that their patients are healthy, and that data is aggregated by Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. But it isn't open to the public, at least not that I've seen. And if you've been to the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services website, it is not the easiest to navigate. And if me as a provider has trouble trying to find my information or the information of my colleagues, I don't know how you're going to be able to do it either. So without making this episode too long, I'm going to break this up into two parts. And in the second part, we're going to talk about hospitals and nursing homes. A key takeaway from this episode is going to be, how do you go about finding a doctor? And here's my advice to you. Feel free to read the reviews on Google, Healthgrades, or whatever site that you find, but take those reviews with a grain of salt. I'd rather you depend on the reviews given to you by friends and family or by other doctors, because that's going to give you a better sense of what you can expect when you meet that doctor. And remember, once you see a doctor, it is not an automatic you're stuck with that doctor. This is going to be a lifelong relationship, hopefully, and you need to find somebody that you can trust, confide in, and that makes you feel comfortable and has your interests in mind. So shop around. Just like you would shop for the perfect car, you need to shop for the perfect doctor for you. This ends the episode, and as always, I'll give it to you straight. Thank you for listening.